Animation is an ever-evolving medium. As technology improves and stylistic choices become more refined, we're constantly seeing shifts and changes in the way in which animators choose to envision their designs. This applies to both Eastern and Western styles of animation, ranging in a plethora of types all across the medium. Anime in particular has seen a huge transitional shift over the past 2 decades, being almost unrecognizable in comparison to its previous counterparts from the past, yet still retaining the same lustrous charm it possesses. Throughout its evolution, we've seen many different tried and tested animation styles, and creative minds constantly trying to push the medium forward. We've seen a recent interest in creating and integrating 3D CG into anime, from more efficient methods of making background noise in regular 2D animation, such as crowds of people, animals, and monsters, to fully fledged CG animations rendered entirely in 3D. However, with all of this being said, we really have to sit back and think about its implications within anime, as introducing an overhaul as drastic as this and expecting similar results to its predecessors is quite an insurmountable task. Some would say that knowing a particular show is CG is a warning sign from the get-go, and so I would like to pitch the question of, does 3D CG anime actually work? This question, where being quite subjective, is one that piques discussion and interest, so allow me to dive deeper into my personal thoughts on such a topic. I find myself to be particularly skeptical of 3D CG anime, regardless of where or how it's used, as it's garnered a fairly negative reputation for itself over the past with the damage that it's already done. But can you honestly blame me, or anyone for that matter, on being as paranoid about such a controversial topic as this one? Now, I was originally going to have some heavy-worded and poetic introduction to an example of a show that has really bad CG. But, I mean, you already know what I'm going to talk about, as I'm fairly certain you've been on the internet for more than 5 minutes. So, let's just cut to the chase. Berserk 2016 is a show that exists. That's about all I can say about it. Heck, that's not even remotely close to a compliment. It shouldn't exist. It should be burned at the stake, or at the very least re-evaluated by the people that spawned it before thinking, you know what, guys? I think the show is meant to move at more than 5 frames per second, you know? I've never actually read Berserk, so I can't say that I've ever been a fan of the franchise, although I'm fully aware of not only the massive cult appeal that this franchise has, and its tremendous following, but also that it's an incredibly strong franchise that's gritty, violent, and has incredible art far beyond the scope of any manga to this date. Kentaro Miura is a mangaka of a mangaka aspire to be, being held as one of the great authors and artists of the current age, creating vivid imagery with finely crafted line work handled with absolute precision. So, of course, with such a wondrous legacy of pristine artistry, the best thing to do is take the key prospect that Berserk is known for, which is the highly detailed, visionary work that unfolds a brand new world right before the reader's eyes. Forget that it even happened, and spew out a horrifying mess of bad visuals, with characters rendered straight from a cheap movie tie-in PS1 game, and flawed choreography that destroys basic filmmaking principles, leaving nothing more than an unprofessional heap of congealed mass that belongs in the trash more than anything. It's the kind of show you wouldn't wish upon your worst enemies, let alone anyone who insults your favorite waifu. I exposed myself to 2 episodes of this utter train wreck, and it was even worse than I expected it to be, as it didn't deserve any more of my time with it being so atrocious. Where I won't be breaking down everything the show does wrong, you should be able to see exactly the issues with the art style in the show on your screen right now, and digging any further into playground insults against such a show would only be the equivalent of beating a dead horse that many other YouTubers killed a long time ago. There were moments of complete shock at the bizarre choice of cinematography, breaking of simple, fundamental filmmaking rules, such as the 180-degree rule, and the crisp sound design, coming together to give every upcoming and aspiring animator a tutorial on what not to do when approaching an intellectual property, and attempting to adapt it into something worthwhile, which, of course, Berserk 2016 isn't. So do your best to avoid it at all costs. Unless you're drunk, and you're watching it with friends, in which case that'll probably be the best thing ever. But I can't confirm that to you since I have no friends. On the brighter side of things, let's talk about a show that does a relatively okay job at creating a competent anime and utilizing 3D CG to a deplorable degree in which it attempts to use the medium, albeit still hindering itself unnecessarily. Ajin is a show that shapes a world around humans living alongside other unknown entities that go by the name of Ajin, immortal and powerful creatures capable of immense feats of physical strength, invisible to the average human, yet their only real goal is to live peaceful lives alongside other humans. But due to their power they're deemed as a threat to mankind, and are taken taken into custody upon discovery, regardless of who they are. The concept for the show itself is relatively interesting, with quite a number of twists and smart ideals strewn about that it makes for a generally fantastic narrative, with its weakest points severely letting it down with significantly unlikable protagonists and a relatively forgettable soundtrack and overall sound design, not adding anything in the scenes where they're needed the most, giving a level of emptiness to scenarios that just needed that little bit extra to take them from good to great. But we're here to talk about the animation, so how does Ajin stand out in this regard? Well, you see, that's the hardest part to really talk about. Ajin itself is quite an average endeavor, and the show being in 3D is quite a baffling decision to say the least. This is because almost nothing is achieved by this stylistic choice, with the only real notable instance of 3D being the Ajin themselves, as their design is actually incredible, but this functions as a double-edged sword. The Ajin looking as brilliant as they do make everything else in the show look like a severe downgrade, as the characters' designs don't come even remotely close to standing out as much as the Ajin do. And so we find ourselves at an impasse of amazingly fearful creatures cloaked in shadow, looking all edgy and badass, and then the bland and forgettable character designs everywhere else, given some unique qualities in their person. Analyzing this made me realize that the show could have been slightly more effective if it were exclusively done in a 2D animation style, as the 3D fails to achieve anything exclusive to its renditions. Even better, it could have blended the two styles together, similar to a show like Toji no Miko, which utilizes both 2D and 3D animation within its fight scenes, flowing seamlessly between the two without drawing away from the viewer's immersion, and not limiting itself to the multiple ways that it unintentionally holds itself back. Toji no Miko creates fast-paced action scenes by applying its preset styles in both 2D and 3D, mixing both of them in an effort to create a sense of tensity that flows naturally within the context of the frame, utilizing the unique prowess of each animation style to a strong degree that it achieves something far greater than if it were just one or the other. And I would have loved to have seen something similar to this with Ajin, as the Ajin designs look fantastic in 3D, and if they could have been integrated in their 3D state into a 2D animation with more of a significantly unique flair to it, then it would have been able to acclaim more. But it didn't, unfortunately, so it's very average. Now go sit in the corner and think about what you've done.
Also, I just wanted to talk about Toji no Miko, as there was a character called Yomi in it, and she was the worst character in the show. Why though? We share a bond, a connection, and you ruined it. Why are you so one-note and bland? And nothing happens with you throughout the whole show. Like, you were meant to be cool, and I had faith, dang it.
All of what I previously mentioned would have finalized my opinion on 3D anime, as the negatives definitely do outweigh the positives. But then a show came along that changed my mind, and very quickly became one of the most beautiful and fascinating shows that I've ever seen. Houseki no Kuni, or Land of the Lustrous, takes an incredibly unique concept and creates a marvelous landscape in both a narrative aspect and a visually pleasing, downright gorgeous show, taking 3D CG anime to its limits and far beyond that, to make an experience that isn't one to be soon forgotten. With a story that takes place in the future long after the time of humans, organisms known as gems walk the land, living to fight against the threat of a race of beings known as Lunarians, whose only apparent goal is to shatter the gems and abduct them to use them as decorations and accessories. We're taken along on this journey with our titular, clumsy, and airheaded protagonist, Phosphophylite, who is incapable of combat and just about everything else, being one of the weaker gems around, which is bonus points for you geologists out there. I won't go too far into spoiler territory, as it's honestly a story that needs to be experienced no matter what you're into, as I can assure that you'll enjoy this immensely. But of course, as you can more than likely tell, the show isn't simply about the story, as its consistent art style and awe-inspiring visual direction creates a feeling of unmatched fascination with the show, as something as vivid as this wouldn't be achievable with simple 2D animation. We can envision it, and we know that it would come somewhat close, but it wouldn't have the same impact or appeal to it, with many more visible weaknesses than what we see with the 3D animation. But there are definitely some weaker parts, with incredible choreography and a lot of scenes and an audaciously eye-catching color palette, even during the scenes at night and even in winter, with some slight problems with the image's stability, and a few inconsistencies here and there doesn't mean that the show is perfect. But I am quite heavily biased towards the show, as it's something that I found myself completely obsessed with upon viewing it, and I can't wait to see what direction the series goes in next.
This video was also a pretty good excuse to talk about how good Houseki no Kuni is.
Woo! Overall, we've seen the good, we've seen the bad, and we've also seen Berserk 2016, and we've all remembered that happened, and we'd rather not. But with all of this being said, we know what this style of animation is capable of, and we only want to see something like this succeed. It's not completely evident whether or not it works, or even if the medium of anime is ready to fully adopt and embrace such a stylistic overhaul, as the state of 2D animation currently far surpasses 3D. But it's always something to keep in mind when approaching new shows and new grounds that attempt to try something that strays from the norm. But what do you think? Let me know by commenting below, and if you haven't done already, be sure to like and subscribe for more content like this, and cue the stupid intro. Down on the aces.